Verity, and I work for GWI, who are a marketing data firm, and I am their head of legal ops for them. So I look after their commercial contracts, and the idea is to make it all go faster and smoother. We'll have a variety of things come through. Although our product is quite straightforward, there can be nuances to bespoke pieces of work, and that's when my team come in when they need to look at those and create different wording and amendments to our standard T's and C's. So on average, we can see sort of 20 to 30 deals in train a week between us that we're touching at different points. So yeah, it can be chaotic. So when I joined, there was an inbox, very common way to deal with queries into a legal team. Has big challenges for a busy team in terms of not knowing who's dealing with what matter, where it's at, who needs to be involved. It's not very collaborative. Things just get lost. You don't know if people have acknowledged it. So that was sort of the first thing I was looking at. We progressed to a Excel spreadsheet, which became our matter management system, which everyone thought was amazing. And I just knew that wasn't the right answer. I don't love Excel. I'm, putting it out there, I don't love it. So then you have a big Excel spreadsheet, which is not very stable. So it can crash, people can delete things, and unless you know your way around Excel, which I am not a pro at Excel, my assistant's pretty good, but still not a pro, unless you know how to fix things and recover things, you very easily lose that data very quickly. So I was like, we can get something better. I know there is something better, probably thinking about some kind of ticketing thing, but I still think there's something better, and was tabled by Hannah Koss quite early on in my journey with GWI, and just had it in the back of my mind, this is something interesting. It was just something that could organise it. It's just organising, being on top of things and collaborating. That's the important drivers for me that made me eventually pick up the phone and go, I'm ready now. Need some help. The way we use it is it's very customer facing. So the sales teams can go there and they can raise a ticket for a different number of things, but then there's actually a knowledge section that we use as well. So we've got some FAQs built in there. And the main thing that we spent a lot of time building is like these workflows. They're like interactive FAQs, so you can go in and find, if you're not quite sure which pathway you need to take, like what outcome you need, what ticket do you even want to raise, basically, or do you need a ticket? We built some conditional logic to sort of answer a set of questions that will then result in an outcome. Quite a sort of complicated flow in the background, but essentially someone can go in there, plug in their answers, and then they will get our advice, if you like, as to what you need to do next for that client. So that's like the front piece there. Then they can raise a ticket. So that's our intake. And then after that, when they've got their ticket and we've assigned someone, so immediately they know that we've got it. They know it's now signed, and then we can talk to them through it. And then it's all recorded. So for me, I'm quite hot on having an audit trail, because if things go wrong and you need to, heaven forbid, have something like litigation against something, we get sued for something, someone wants to just not pay us for something, we have the records. We can go back, we can look at that case and, essentially say, well, this is what happened. This is the trail of events. We recorded it. And the sales teams have been really, really receptive to that. And they understand that that's a good thing to do. So no side of the desk conversations, no, oh, well, so-and-so told me over a cup of coffee. Like that's not how it rolls anymore. We don't do it like that anymore. We've also implemented, which has been has been really helpful with the ticketing and knowing that this is kind of leading how do you get legal involved in our Salesforce like process when the guys are putting together their deals, there's actually now, if they need anything outside of standard T's and C's or any other agreed self-serve route, it now prompts them to fill in a ticket directly from Salesforce, so they can't really avoid it. It's how we've worked that now. And it has, I can tell you, it's been successful, the implementation, because we've now sunsetted that original inbox. It now doesn't exist. So why did I decide to move away from the inbox and use a front door, resulting in actually sunsetting the inbox? There's this thing that happens with emails, I call it mind reading. So if people want something done, they know what they need done, so they just send a quick fire email, and it's usually maybe a one-liner. You'll get the odd person that will give you everything, all of their life story, War and Peace, what they need to do, but the majority will give you a one-liner, and that is normally not enough for a legal team to pick up and deal with these queries. So we spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what do we need to know? How many times do we go round and round on an email trail to get to where we need to? What's our crucial pieces of upfront information that we need? So, and in the ticketing system, in tabled, these sort of request forms can be completely configured and tailored to what we need to ask, and that includes attachments, and you can have links to internal systems, especially for Salesforce, because it normally relates to a deal, so they want to be able to put that link in there. There is free format boxes, so they can write us what they want, and then when we pick that deal up, we know that we haven't got to go back and ask. Sometimes we do, because it might be really complex, but probably 90% of the cases now are ready to go. And that's when thinking about our turnaround times from that initial receiving of an instruction, the time from that to actually, oh, I know what you need now, that light bulb moment when you've realised what they're asking you, probably could have been a week before, maybe longer, depending on time you get to speak to these people, is now we assign and it's picked up within like 2 days. So it's assigned within 24 hours minimum, and then it's worked on. Sometimes the response is back within 2 days, 3 days. So we really are now to the point we've kind of nailed what we need to know to get these deals in motion. And we've got some other forms on there as well that are a bit more generic, because they might not know what they need from us. Even after all of the resources, they still might not know. So those can take a little bit more time, but we've still got forms built out for those that they can fill in and create those tickets from those. But they're super helpful just from a perspective of making sure we've got the right documents attached. We've asked, have you got the right approvals? Is this ready to go? From a capacity and planning, I've only got so many people. There's a certain amount of work that fluctuates. It's never the same. Just gets busy at certain points, peaks and troughs. So tabled helps me to get that over, like that helicopter view is what I call it. So I'm looking down, I can see how many people I've got. There's a nice little tool in there that can rate their capacity, little traffic light system. So they're having a really bad day, it might go red. That's one great point that I couldn't see before. I can then see how many things are in train, so across the entirety of everybody, and it can tell me at which stage it's at as well. So if, you know, there's a bucket that we've got, if you like, that is things that are new, and then it's stuff in review, and then stuff that's back to the client or the sales rep. So I sort of judge by just a real quick look. I can just see, this column is massive, what's going on? And then that's when, I might call a team meeting to say, is there a problem? What's happened? And we can have a quick chat about that. But everyone knows that that's there, and that I can see that, and they know that if there is a problem, we can all talk about it, and we can share the allocations. And we might have someone out sick, there might be a system problem that's causing a lot of admin to come off the back of it. So it's just a really useful touch point. It's just part of my daily routine now. Every morning I go and have a quick look, see what's going on in the world, in all the different matters that are coming in. I think, oh yeah, okay, it's looking all right. Today's a quiet day. Maybe we can get this done. So yeah, it's really, really helpful for just workload planning and understanding what the team are up to. What did I like most about Tabled when I first saw it is it just looked really simple, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It just looked easy to use. And I'm not a tech person, I work for a tech firm, but I've learned a lot over the time, and probably pretty well versed in tech now. But for just being able to do what you needed to do, and yeah, just essentially knowing that you can go somewhere and it's kind of all sits in one place, like, you know, like that view. And I like the bit that attracted me probably the most is that overview helicopter view, that I could see what was going on. That was really important for my team and how I plan work and how we know we can cope. So once made the decision and made that phone call to say, look, we want to get going now. So the time's right. Really feel like we need this now. Super quick. Obviously, we'd had a few conversations before, so I'd been through some demos, but you know, as with most businesses, there'll be a business case you'll need to justify to your, you know, powers above, ensuring you've got the right budgets and things like that. So I'd, you know, spent some time prepping all that, the reasons why that needed to be done. But once we were there, super quick turnaround on a contract, which is great between us, getting that negotiated. And then the implementation was in, well, I don't even think it was a couple of weeks, really. We had a environment that was just for the legal team, so we could see that environment straight away. Most of the forms and everything were configured by ourselves and built by ourselves. We had some help on a couple of bits, the conditional logic, because that was quite complicated, but we probably could have done a simpler version ourselves. So, and then we had Paul supporting us, who jumped on calls, was just there to answer any questions, really receptive to ideas that we had. Could we do it this way? Could we think about that? Quite hot on branding as a company, so we needed to show that it was something to do with the company and not just a random tool that we'd, you know, that they just need to find or remember its name, all of that stuff. So yeah, it was super quick. We had a plan, it all went to plan. Yeah, really, really happy with the implementation. How did it land internally for us? Really well, but I was strategic in the way that I did this. So I didn't go for a big bang launch. It was something we spent a lot of time thinking about as a team, that we really wanted this to work because it would make such a big difference to us. So we selected some champions internally, some of our sales guys that, you know, were notorious for, you know, telling us we're not, you know, you're not going quick enough or this or that. And, you know, people that we thought would really find it helpful. So we run a sort of a program of a soft launch where all of our internal resources were updated with links to find it. Then we'd select some people and say, look, for this deal, so they'd send in their email request, but then we'd say to them, can we just jump on a call with you quickly and show you our new system, and you're gonna get first look, right, how this amazing new thing is coming to us. And that was for, like, they like to try things, which is really great, and then they realized how easy it was to use. Then they told their friends. It just sort of like naturally integrated itself to the point where some of their senior leaders now will say to them, well, if you haven't put it on Tabled, it won't get done, will it? So, but the feedback from the actual sales guys on the ground doing the job that use it daily, they've just said it's just completely changed everything. We can see what's happening. We don't need to chase anymore. It's just revolutionized the legal process. So amazing feedback. And I'm also, another thing that had happened that I didn't quite foresee happening, but as sort of the best compliment, we were launching a bigger, wider project for the business to implement Salesforce CPQ. So we had Salesforce just changing over to CPQ, and Tabled has held it up in the middle. So when it launched, middle of April, things got broken, everything went a bit crazy, people were a bit upset, a bit shouty, but Tabled was there in the background, holding all the information, knowing what was happening with all the deals. It was like became almost a single point of truth of what was happening. And so much so, as I mentioned, that they built it into part of the flow, so it's there, and it just became recognised that this is a good piece of tech that supports the teams, and we know what's happening. So I took that as probably the biggest compliment I wasn't expecting to happen. So really pleased. The great thing about Tabled, and what else that we use it for, is for data. So how do I use it for data? One of the features that we've only recently started using it, but that's because we needed to, you know, bed it in and make sure that we were getting the right data, but is the KPI feature. So we can track from one status to another what the time is. We can set an average timing on that. It can tell me by user, and it's not so much of a using it as a bad thing, like trying to catch people out. It's more of a measure for, you know, how we are performing against some of the feedback that I received last year when I joined the company, and, you know, things are taking 90 days to get an answer, and all of that crazy stuff that I couldn't justify, or nobody could verify it back to me whether that was actually reality or not, because nobody was tracking it. So today I can tell you, between a lawyer being assigned and then doing the first turn, we averaged 3 days. So we didn't know that before. We guessed, but it wasn't 3 days. It was much more than that, maybe 7 days. I don't know. It was a guess. So now I can track those, which have now, we've been able to create some performance measures for the team. So they've kind of know how we've justified that. Because that's really helpful as well, is to not set unrealistic targets for people without some kind of justification that it can be done. So that was really helpful for performance management. And then generally you can just see as a team what, you know, how much work we're actually working on. So when I think about capacity planning, so if I'm asked to reduce headcount, all those horrible challenges that come up in jobs, especially legal functions that, you know, have to probably justify their existence, I can say, well, I've, you know, implemented these measures now, and I know that my team are working on the right piece of work, and this is a reduction from last year. So just some figures out of, you know, from recent findings. I now know that we are looking at 15% of the work. So before, we were probably looking at 30 to 40% of the work. So we've massively reduced what we look at, because it's given us those self-serve elements, given us the information, but then when we're in the work, we're doing the right work, which enables us to actually then put the self-serve things in place. Because until I know what we're all talking about, I can't actually do the self-serve parts. I don't know what needs fixing. So, you know, the progression now from the data is now seeing what's next. How can we reduce that further so that, you know, the team is still able to focus on more, you know, the juicy stuff that they need to get involved in, and not the admin. Essentially for me, I needed to quickly gain control. So that was where I was sitting thinking, how do I get control? What can help me do that? And so I was then, that's what made me think about or perhaps it is the intake then. Perhaps that is where I need to start. So it's being able to shut out maybe the external noise and listening to the internal noise, and not necessarily go with what's trending. At the time, I just remember sort of talking to, you know, the powers above, and them looking at me like I was a bit crazy, like, well, you know, you've got this legal tool, why aren't you using this? And I was like, well, because it doesn't do what I need it to do. So trust your gut, trust what you know is potentially what the problem is and what people make the most noise about. I think that's probably my best bit of advice.